Hi and welcome to Future Proofing. I'm your host Ekalavya Amit, and this show is presented by Intel vPro, built for business. In this show, we talk about Web3, blockchain, metaverse, and we try to decode and figure out all the applications and implications it's going to have in various fields like healthcare, media and entertainment, advertising, sports, and lots more. Today's episode is special. We are discussing sports. And if you're curious about how Web3 is going to have an impact in the world of sports, this is the episode to tune into. In our studio today, we have a very special guest. He's the founder of IVM Podcasts, and what many of you might not know, he's also a complete geek when it comes to the NBA and the NFL. Today, we're going to discuss about the cartelization of sports, Allen Iverson, and a lot of really cool stuff which is happening in the sporting world. We'll take a quick Intel vPro break and see you on the other side of this fascinating discussion. Welcome back, and in studio today we have a very special guest. A lot of you might know of him, but might not know that he's also a very big sports geek, loves his NBA, loves his NHL. Welcome, Amit. How's it going?
I'm doing well. Not so much NHL, more NFL.
More NFL. Amit, so we'll dive straight in.
Sure.
What sort of a sports consumer are you?
I'm at this point primarily basketball.
Okay.
I watch some football as in like NFL American and football as in European. But I would say 90% of what I watch is basketball. It's convenient from a time perspective. Most of the games are at 5:30 or 4:30 or 5:30, 6:30 in the morning, our time, 7:30 at our time. So I can watch a game before I go to work, or I wake up a little early, watch a game. You know, it's a lot easier to do than any of the other sports, right? NFL football starts at 10:30 in the night, our time, which is not such a bad idea, such a bad time. But when it goes to 11:30 in the night, then that's just impossible. Who's going to stay up till 3 a.m. to watch a game?
So what got you started with NBA? Why do you love NBA so much? And tell us a little more about your favorite team, your favorite players.
I was born in the U.S. I was born in Philadelphia. And so I've been an NBA fan pretty much all my life.
The 76ers.
The 76ers,
oh, yeah.
Yes. On the verge of elimination, not quite yet, though. Hopefully by the time this podcast airs, though, we shall be the NBA champions, but I doubt that's likely to happen this year. Let's hope. So the playoffs are going on right now when we're recording. And so I'm a Sixers fan. I became a Sixers fan because I was born in Philadelphia. I went for games when I was a child. I remember a few of them vaguely, not too terribly well. When I went back to college at Delaware, at that time I went for a bunch of games. That was not a good time for the Sixers, but I did go. Hey, we got a bunch of $7 tickets, right? Even back then, $7 tickets were cheap.
What time was this? Not a good time for 76ers?
So this would be between 90... So I was in college between 92 and 97.
Oh, this is pre-AI.
Oh, this is pre-AI. So basically AI was a rookie, or AI got
Allen Iverson
drafted.
For all you guys.
Yes. Yeah. AI got drafted in the summer before I left for India.
Okay.
So I was there for a few months when he was a Sixer, but I was not there for the entire season. I didn't go for any games that year.
Okay.
But the preceding years, the Sean Bradley years or the Clarence Weatherspoon years was when I was spending some time, when I went to a bunch of Sixers games at that point. And then, of course, AI happened, and that's what really kind of accelerated my fandom, if you will. I mean, like always a fan, but like big fan when AI came on.
So tell me, Amit, right? So you mentioned the 90s, and of course, it's been a while since then. So let's look at it, right? Like in the 90s, how was consumption of NBA back then, and how has it evolved, right? And probably we can say Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. This is like early days of the internet.
So, I mean, like, I think one of the things about the NBA specifically, right, is one of the most forward-thinking leagues compared to other leagues, right? And you can see that in a number of different ways. The NBA it can be divided into a couple of different eras, if you will, right? There is the pre-1979 era, right? That's before Magic and Bird became
before
a
Magic
part.
And Bird,
There was the Magic, Bird, and Jordan years, and then which is, I think, I consider that to be an era, right?
80s,
like
90s.
80s and 90s. And then the next era is the Allen Iverson and Kobe Bryant, LeBron James era, which is probably from 2000 to 2014. And we're into the current era, which is the social media era, right? And all of these times have had different kinds of ways to consume this stuff, right? If you look at the Magic and Bird era, right, at that point in time, NBA coverage was very difficult to get. Playoff games were time delayed, not visible, not just didn't show up. There's no
This
footage.
in the US, right?
This
Or
in the US.
for the global audience?
For the global, forget global audience. In the US, games were time delayed, right? So, I mean, like famously playoff games, time delayed, right? Basically, you would see it 3 hours after it happened. Now, there was no internet over there and no Twitter over there, so you weren't being spoiled constantly. But at the same time, it was, it's not ideal. Then after that, things started opening up with the advent of cable. Once cable became more ubiquitous, you started seeing a lot of local TV stations, right? Okay. So, for example, in Philadelphia, NBC Sports Philadelphia, which is a Comcast channel, is where we get most of our sports stuff. In Madison Square Garden, there's an MSG channel in New York where you get all of the Knicks games, the Rangers games, the New York Yankees games. There is a channel in Boston, which is again a sports channel, but these are all kind of came on the back of cable. In the next era, you started to see more of the internet part and the internet delivery of games itself, if you will, right? And that's, sorry, not the internet games, but basically marketing around the game happening via the internet, right?
Early 2000s.
I would say early 2000s is when, like the NBA, again, very progressive league. Most of the athletes are super smart. So, I mean, it became a thing where all of them were very internet friendly in that sense, right? But the real revolution around this stuff came post Twitter, post Instagram, post Facebook to an extent, because one of the differences between the NBA and most other sports leagues in that sense is the NBA, they protect their IP, don't get me wrong, but they don't try and take down every second highlight package that a fans put up.
Like what BCCI does.
Like what BCCI does, like what the NFL does, like what the EPL does, like what pretty much every other league does.
I think another thing is when the internet was rising was also coincided with the rise of Jordan, right? And the internet was full of Jordan, Space Jam.
More Kobe than Jordan. Jordan, the internet was a thing in the 90s, but the internet became big in the 2000s, right? So I feel like Kobe and AI are more beneficiaries of the internet era than like a Jordan is, right? Jordan got a tremendous amount of popularity, but So one of my favorite American broadcasters, especially around the NBA, is a guy named Bob Costas. He was also the guy who did the Olympics for the NBA and stuff like that. He made this, I was listening to him on the podcast a while ago, and he made this kind of thing, right? He made this comparison. When people talk about the greatest players in the NBA, they'll talk about LeBron James and they'll talk about Michael Jordan mostly. And he said that LeBron James might be a greater player than Michael Jordan is, though he does not believe that's the case. But he said that, yes, there's an argument to be there.
That's kind of everlasting debate, right?
But Michael Jordan was the most important player who ever played in the NBA. The reason for that is just basically the way the media functioned at that time, right? 3 channels. Most NBA Finals in prime time at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Everybody's watching it. So,
Malone versus Jordan, 96, 98.
Jordan, even starting earlier, starting with this series against the Lakers, the Portland Trailblazers, the Charles Barkley versus Michael Jordan, Phoenix Suns versus Bulls series was one of the highest rated ever. And so, there is an aspect of basically it being appointment watching. That's never been replicated again in the NBA. The only thing that comes close to that, I think, in sports in the US is the NFL Super Bowl, and maybe in India it's the World Cup final. Okay, so tell me, since we're speaking about Jordan and early AI Kobe days, tell me some of your favorite moments from that time. Do you have any favorite moment? And you know why I'm asking you this, right? I know why you're asking me this. I have a lot of favorite moments. AI stepping over Ty Lue is one of my 2001 All-Stars. 2001 Finals, NBA Finals. The Sixers lost 4-1 in the series against the Lakers. But the first game they won, and basically, after hitting some crazy shot, Allen Iverson stepped over Tyronn Lue. Would you buy an NFT of that? Depends on how much money it costs. What do you think about NFTs in general? I understand the concept of collectibles. I think that there is some value to them. I think that we're still in very early days, so I don't know what these values should be. So some of the shit's crazy. Let's play on the collectibles, right? Trading cards, and that's pretty much gone into NFTs, right? So early 90s, were trading cards popular? Have not gone into NFTs. Trading cards are still really
Tell us a little more.
Really popular.
Tell us a little more.
The trading cards are very popular. They actually, in the pandemic, they took on a big resurgence in the same way that a lot of other kinds of collectible art did. Because what is a trading card, right? It's basically a piece of paper that has some printing on it that people value for the time that it was printed at and the person or this that they are, right? So, trading cards were really popular in the 90s, they kind of lost popularity to a certain extent. Why would that happen? Oversupply.
Okay.
What wound up happening is that there were a few companies in the trading card space, and they wound up creating they just made the supply so ludicrously large that the example often given is Ken Griffey Jr., baseball player, one of the best players like ever in history. A rookie card of Ken Griffey Jr. is available for like $10 or $15 right now, right? Because there were just so many of them at the time. Whereas if you look at Hank Aaron rookie card, Hank Aaron is probably a player 35 years older than that, right? His rookie card's I think like $1 million or something like that. So it really does matter how much supply is there.
Yeah, completely.
So that's one of the challenges with NFTs in my mind, right? If anybody can mint an NFT,
supply, to oversupply.
There's no restriction on supply, right? Who is restricting the supply here?
So what do you mean by that? Like it's available everywhere? A video clip is available on YouTube?
I mean, like, listen, NFT is essentially a purely technical solution to make a piece of content or to make a piece of data unique.
Okay. It's a non-fungible token, right?
Non-fungible is a purely technical solution, right? Why? So now outside of the NBA providing the official license to somebody, right? Counterfeiting the shit's like ridiculously easy, isn't it?
Yeah, just like people say, right? Like a screenshot or just like recording the video. So what's the ownership aspect of it?
That's the other part of it, which makes it even less useful. But Picasso paintings do have prints available, right? So maybe you can make that comparison here, right? That you can get a print of a Michelangelo, you can get a print of a Picasso or whoever, like a Van Gogh. Right, so maybe that comparison is there when you're talking about taking a screenshot of an NFT or copying it, right? But I'm just like, it's if you think about it, right? Other than the fact that you're buying it from a particular place, what is there that I can today I watch the NBA games on my computer.
Okay.
Occasionally, mostly I watch it on television, but occasionally I watch on a computer. It's very easy for me to basically take footage from a computer and capture it.
Yeah.
Right. No matter how much they're trying their DRM, I can capture this footage. What prevents me from rolling an NFT with that?
Okay.
I'm serious. I'm asking this honest question.
So you're going to create it and you're saying that you'll put it up on, say, an OpenSea platform.
I'll put
it
up on some marketplace somewhere.
Okay.
I'll put it up on something like some random marketplace.
Yeah.
I'll get a couple of bucks for it.
Yeah.
I might not get the $1 million that Derrick Rose gets.
You might fool someone.
But I'll get something.
So a little more about this Derrick Rose NFT, right? Mm-hmm. Like a layup of his sold for $1 million. A
layup of his when he was a Detroit Piston, not a Chicago Bill.
Why would someone pay $1 million for that?
I have no idea whatsoever. It makes no sense.
So I'll give you another example. One of LeBron's early dunks was minted for $39,000.
Okay.
That recently went for around $220,000.
Okay.
Someone resold it. Why is this happening? Is it the greater fool theory in place?
It is 101% the greater fool theory in place.
So it's not this collectible memorabilia. It's just for arbitrage. People are buying and hoping that...
I believe that there are utilities to NFTs. Okay. I do. I'm not a crypto skeptic, right? Okay. I'm not like one of those guys like this shit's all bullshit. I'm not that, right? But at the same time, I think that a certain amount of we need to take a measured approach to how you look at this stuff, right? And the idea that a Derrick Rose NFT from a point in time when he was not at his best,
not at his peak,
like nowhere close to his peak, right? I mean, he was not at his peak when he was still a Chicago Bull, and now he's playing for Detroit, and that sells for $1 million. The most expensive NFT available today, I just checked before we started, was $9,350 for Kevin Durant's dunk last year during the NBA semifinals, during the Eastern Conference semifinals. That makes sense to me. Yeah. Right? $10,000, still a lot of money. Not like I have that money floating around and I can just go buy it. But I can get on board with that to an extent.
Okay.
But what is this still?
But tell me, Amit, if you were to, I get the whole skepticism around, it's not completely exclusive. It's available on YouTube. Anyone can copy it. What kind of an NFT would you buy?
I'd buy one of Allen Iverson stepping off Ty Lue if I got it for like $100.
And what about it? Like just a video clip?
Well, yeah, the video clip, right?
Customized video clip.
So I think I think that's a really interesting area. You mentioned customized video clips. I think that's a really interesting area for NFTs. So, for example, a NFT of Allen Iverson stepping over that dude and him commenting at the same time.
Okay.
Now you're talking. Now you got me interested. Right?
That's a good collectible, you're saying?
That makes sense as a collectible.
Or an investment.
Because what's happening over there is Allen Iverson is creating content specifically to be an NFT and not like some random fucking puppy face, right? This is like a real piece of, he's talking about let's say you do an 8-second clip about him hitting that shot and then walking over Tai Lu, and he's giving you like in 8 seconds, you can say a lot.
True.
Right? So, I mean, like that makes sense to me. That is something there is some logic to it.
Unique. Like
It's
only one of
unique.
its kind.
It's one of a kind. It's something made specifically as a collectible rather than just like clipping highlights,
Sure.
which is what most of what's available
Most
right
of
now.
it,
is
like
clipping
NBA Top
highlights.
Shots is just about clips and
Yeah, it's
highlights.
clips and highlights. And I mean, like that stuff doesn't, like, I'm just like, I can get that easily. Why would I get that? But put Allen Iverson in there. You edit the film, so edit the clip so that
What
Allen
about today's day? Joel Embiid probably dunking.
Yeah, I'd take that. I would love to see Joel Embiid, like take a shot of Joel Embiid starting off his commentary with Joel Embiid visible on the video.
Okay.
And then after that, cut to him taking a, like, dunking over XYZ person or what have you. And him at the same time commenting under it. I'm on board for things like that.
$1 million?
I don't have $1 million. If I had it, I still wouldn't probably spend it.
Okay. But you
if
think there might be an audience somewhere?
there might be an audience for something like that. Okay, given my current financial straits, if you will, I'd pay $10,000 for something like that.
Okay.
I'd pay $15,000 for something like that. Would I pay 5 lakhs? Absolutely not.
But you're saying as a collectible, right? Or do you expect some utility? Maybe a meet and greet with Joel Embiid?
well, so I mean, like that is
Signed autograph with it?
But how is that now an NFT?
Okay.
That now what we're talking about is we're talking about an appearance fee or a meet fee with Joel Embiid. That's not an NFT anymore.
But you can probably bank it 10 years down the line or something. So I'm talking about utilities to NFTs, right?
So utility to NFT. Okay, so the one that I see the most is ticketing.
Agree. Tell me.
Ticketing to me makes so much sense as an NFT, right?
Okay.
Because one is a non-fungible. You can't transfer it to anybody without like going onto the blockchain in some sense. It is a unique piece. You can build it through whatever you want to. It is something that stays with you if you keep
Okay.
it. So, I mean, like I think we spoke about this before, but let's say you were able to go to the 2020 All-Star game.
Okay.
All right, that was an amazing All-Star game. Incredible. It was right before the pandemic. The game itself was awesome. It was the first time they used the Elam ending, which is basically an alternate way to end the game. So let's not get too much into that. But it's the first time they used the Elam ending. It was an incredible game. If I had that ticket purchased as an NFT, I could hold it for 20 years, and now that's a collectible.
Okay.
Because there was some utility to it at the start when I bought it, and now I have it, and I've had it for 20 years. That's a collectible.
But collectible for self, right? Do you think someone would pay you for it?
Yeah. People buy this kind of stuff all the time. It's memorabilia, right? In that
Okay.
sense, like I remember when I was in college in the US, tickets to the Chicago World Fair, which I think happened in 1904,
Okay.
sold for like $10,000.
Okay. Like what about not just memorabilia, right? Okay. Now imagine a future ticket. Okay. So let's probably give an example of IPL.
Okay.
So Lucknow has a new team.
Yes.
Probably it's struggling in filling up its stadium. And it says that we will release a ticket as an NFT, which allows you access to 10 years to our matches. Is this something where you see there's some sort of a value, or it
I think as a pure technical solutions,
Okay.
NFTs work brilliantly for ticketing.
Okay.
Because again, non-fungible, you eliminate piracy, you can't transfer this without going into some centralized system, right? I mean, decentralized,
Agreed,
centralized, right? But without going on the blockchain, you can't transfer
Sure.
this. It eliminates it eliminates scalping and stuff like
Yeah.
that, right? Which I think is a benefit in some ways.
Okay.
But beyond that, right? I mean, like, again, if you're talking about a 10-year ticket,
Yeah.
I don't know. I would rather have 10 one-year tickets.
Okay. You're
Or-
saying it need not be linked to blockchain, right? Like you don't need blockchain for probably a 10-year ticket.
Well, I mean, like, why not just a one-game ticket and just give me 10 years worth of one-game tickets?
Maybe as an investment, right? So I'll tell you where I'm coming
yeah.
from. So imagine it's a sport which is not too popular, or it's a sporting team which is not too popular,
Sure.
right? And it's basically selling you more than a season ticket. It's probably selling a lifetime ticket, right? And what happens is if maybe you as an early believer of a fan buys it, right? And the team does well. Maybe it's also an investment opportunity, right? Like, I don't know. We're talking about the future, right?
I hear what you're talking about, right? I hear what you're saying, but again, the question I have, right, is what we're trying to do is we're trying to find utility for NFT.
Okay. Yeah.
What you're describing to me does not need an NFT.
Okay.
Right? No, it doesn't, right? You can do the same thing with paper tickets.
Agreed.
Right? I mean, like, there are like Our Mumbai Indians, and besides that, your international sports franchises all run season ticket programs. All have automatic renewals. You can pay for multiple years at a time. They just send you paper tickets instead, right? So the function you're describing does not require an NFT.
Okay,
right?
That's a valid point.
Yeah. But having said that, is NFT a good way to implement this? Yes, absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about something else with the Australian Open guys did.
I really like what they did. That was a great idea.
Yeah, so Australian Open became the first of the Grand Slam to get on the metaverse. And they did this unique concept called the art ball. Apart from having a metaverse where you could walk in and experience elements of the Australian Open, they'd actually divided their court into like around 6,000 pieces.
Okay.
And with real-time data available, if the ball, during the match point, if the ball actually hit on this virtual 19 by 19 centimeters, which you could own
by NFT.
Yeah, buying an NFT, then you got utilities, right? Like merchandise, like the ball. And I think there's something really unique. Like I think there's a little potential in that, right?
I really like the idea, but again, I would say, the thing is that for a technology like NFTs to take off, it needs to be able to do something that you cannot do with your existing tech, right? What you also described right now can be accomplished with paper.
On that note, we'll take a quick jump to the segment which we do on our show. It's time for Eka's commandments for future proofing.
Much like in life and the real world, there is a need for stability in the virtual world too. From where we stand, much of Web3 is still a future that is developing and evolving. However, I do know that a more stable future is coming. Stability is the key to long-term success, and Web 1 and Web 2 grew not only larger with every passing day, but also more stable and secure. Same is going to be the case with Web 3 in the years to follow. But if you truly want to future-proof yourself towards a stable user experience, we suggest you check out the Intel vPro line of processors. Enterprise users would understand the importance of stability when it comes to scaling and managing a PC fleet. There are always a number of updates coming out. The Intel vPro platform gives IT and end users the stability and reliability of a business-class device with the help of the latest PC platform technologies in one integrated and validated solution. Intel vPro, built for business. Welcome back and in conversation with Amit. Amit, just before we took a break, we were talking about the decentralization of power, right?
Yeah.
And why I'm saying this is Web3, everyone's talking about openness and trust.
Yeah.
And do you see something like that happening, right? When it comes to, like, imagine an example of BCCI in cricket, right? BCCI has this hold on ICC, right? Because of number of revenue. Do you actually see sporting bodies, evolving through DAOs, through a blockchain where people are like, let's all be open, let's allow people, let's be transparent?
So I agree that there is going to be more openness required in most sporting bodies. The NBA is leading the way in that. You can see in terms of how they operate with their players, with their owners, who they call governors. They don't call them owners anymore. But you can see how they operate in that sense, right? And I mean, like, as a business, there are screw-ups there as well, don't get me wrong, right? But I think that they're one of the most well-operated businesses in sports, right? If you look at the BCCI, or if you look at the NFL or the NBA or any of these company courts, for any of these people for a matter, right? It's essentially a cartel you buy yourself into.
What do you mean by that?
In the sense that basically there are 30 teams, there are 30 owners, you buy yourself into it, it's a cartel of billionaires.
A monopoly which they try to create.
It's a monopoly which they're trying to create, essentially, right? They don't want more people, right? Like, so for example, right now, there is a proposal on the NBA side to create 2 new teams in Seattle and Las Vegas. Now, a lot of the owners are in favor of this right now because it's a cash infusion which they need post-pandemic. But otherwise, this has been on the table for the longest time. The NBA has had 30 teams since I think 2000. When did the last new teams were the Raptors and the Vancouver, who now are the Memphis Grizzlies. And I think that was like 96 or 97. These are the last teams that started, right? That was, 6 and 28, 30 years ago, something like that. In my mind, there's been a need because 15 is an odd number. 32 is the right number if you're trying to run a this. But there was a resistance to doing this because if you're letting more people in, you're dividing your revenue between more people. Now they need the cash, so that's why they want to do it. And I think you see this across the board, right? Sports owners are typically some of the richest, most politically connected, financially connected folks who are going to be out there. They're not really interested in openness.
But sports is, about community, about families, about love, about people getting together.
Playing sports is all about that.
Okay.
Professional sports is all about making money. Like,
it's a business, you're saying,
It's a business. Right? It's not just a business. It's an extraordinarily competitive business. It's a zero-sum game business. Every penny that is being spent on the Sixers in Philadelphia is not being spent on the Flyers or the Eagles, who are on at the same time. It's a cutthroat competitive kind of pace. So I don't see them, one, being open to being open. But besides that, I don't even really believe DAOs are open. I just think DAOs are just another way to avoid regulation.
See, DAOs, again, like they speak about being autonomous, right? And that's going to take some time. But when people say about probably dApps, right, where we're looking at associations where there is no central body which is, which is like trying to usurp all the power.
Who makes the schedule? Who decides the rules?
The owners?
You think you're going to get these guys to agree to something? But again, if they do that, then how have you decentralized your power?
Okay.
You've not, right? If the owners are making the schedules, right? And again, if you're looking at a sports league, right? Any modern sports league, every team plays the same number of games in a year, right? So if you look at how complicated it is to schedule for any major sports league, it's insanely hard because you have to first figure out how everybody plays everybody. You can't have it being in a way, you can't have the schedule being created in a way where like all of a sudden there are Mumbai Indians are playing Kolkata Knight Riders 3 times in a row. Yeah. And then after that, they don't play for the rest of the season. You can't do that. You have to space all of these kind of repeat matches out. You cannot have a situation where one team plays 7 games at home and then 7 games away, like one after the other. You have to kind of have back and forth. These are complicated to make, right? These schedules become really, really tough to do. You need somebody at the central level to do it. How do you decide what rules to enforce, right? How do you decide on policies like Third Empire? How do you decide on policies like what goes to replay, what does not go to replay, right? How do you decide on, like, all of these things come into play? And so there's no interest in the sport.
But these decisions can be more transparent, right? Like, so that, I don't know, maybe because of the NBA, but in the NBA, does one team feel that some other teams have more clout, or it works differently?
Every team feels like other teams have more clout.
Especially, I'll tell you.
Does. See, so again, the thing about a well-run business or a well-run cartel is nobody's perfectly happy.
Okay, yeah, always.
All of the so in the NBA is divided in a bunch of different ways.
Yeah.
Small market teams hate big market teams. Big market teams hate small market teams. Why? Small market teams believe that as soon as their players become slightly famous, big market teams will come and take them. Because everybody wants to live in New York, LA, Philly, Houston, places with good weather, nice. NBA athletes are basically a bunch of 20-year-olds. You know they want to go to the best nightclubs. That's what they want to do in life.
Same with EPL. You'll have just the top 4 teams. In Spain, you just have Barcelona and Madrid.
Now, the bigger markets hate the smaller markets. Why? Because in a sport which has a salary cap, there's revenue sharing.
Okay.
Right? So basically, the bigger market teams are subsidizing the smaller market teams. So the smaller market teams are making enough money so that they can also pay players.
That's unique to the NBA, right?
Like that's unique to any salary cap. No, that's unique to any salary cap league. That's the same holds true for the IPL.
But do you think that's
there's revenue sharing?
Do you think it's good having a salary cap? Because the English Premier League is completely different, right?
So you tell me if you think that's better, or it's better to have like any team can win any year, or if it's the same 3 teams which are going to win every year. Which one do you think is better? There are pros. Honestly, there are pros and cons to either view.
Of course, yeah.
I fall on the side where I believe parity, as in any team can win any year, is a better way to enjoy a sports league. Your team has a chance. Right? If you are today whatever the name of the team that Ted Lasso is coaching, if you're coaching that team, you have no shot.
No, that's a beautiful story, right? Like, since you mentioned the English Premier League, actually, if you look at since the English Premier League was formed in 1992, it's pretty much been like the cartel which you spoke about, the top cartel.
And I think Manchester City won a few years ago, right? That was like the biggest exception.
Not Manchester City, Leicester City won.
Leicester City,
and they had a 1:2. Manchester City are like heavy oil funded, right?
Okay,
so they've been winning. They've been winning every year now
Okay.
for the last. But Leicester City had a 1:5,000 odd
Right.
of winning, and honestly, that year football was really beautiful, right? Because it was different. It was not expected, rather than just
It's
Manchester
fun.
United and
Yeah.
Chelsea and Arsenal.
So you're going to see none of these owners really buy into any of this open stuff, right? I mean, like, you're going to have to force them. Now, how can you force them? You can force them through these kinds of like cartel-like mechanisms, right?
Okay.
Where, hey, do you want to be a part of the cartel or not? If you don't, then we'll kick you out. No problem.
But what about ownership, right? And that's another angle which comes up with when you talk about openness, etc., right? Like the Web
Ownership
3.
of what?
See, so Web 3, many people said Web 1 you would consume, Web 2 you would interact,
Okay.
Web 3 you can also own, right?
Okay.
So do you see, like, as fans, as individuals, people become stakeholders, and probably in a tokenized system, you as a 76ers fan can actually probably own a bit of 76ers? Does that happen anyway already?
So the Green Bay Packers are a publicly traded company. They are owned entirely by their fan base. So it does happen. I think, if I'm not mistaken, there is an EPL team which is also
In football,
publicly
there's
traded.
in football in Bundesliga in Germany. There's Bayern Munich,
Okay.
which is
Bayern
85.
Munich,
Yeah,
that is correct.
85% of their team is owned by
fans. Yeah.
and the remaining by their biggest sponsors. You know,
Correct.
so like guys like Adidas and all. Actually, to get the logo, they actually have to buy into the.
I think
team.
so. Again, I think that you're seeing that this already exists to some degree or the other, right? My skepticism around the more Web 3.0 businessy kind of like, ownership type things, right? I get some utility somewhere, right? But I also am like, no government's going to let you get away with this stuff, right? In the sense,
How do cartels get away?
well, I mean, like, you break the law. Is that
You
really
buy
where
the
you wanna go?
government.
Huh? You buy the government, you break the law. That's how you go about doing it, right? Because, again, I think about it, right? What you're describing is essentially a publicly traded company
Yeah.
without all the regulation.
Yeah.
There's a reason why there's regulation. When there is no regulation around this kind of stuff, you get a bunch of scammy shit happening, which is kind of what you see in a lot of
A lot
places.
is happening, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening like that, right? So, I mean, like, you want to make sure that there's a reason for regulation. Now, does regulation get excessive? Almost inevitably, without doubt, without exception. But unregulated doesn't work either.
Okay.
So there is a medium to be struck over here. And the second you get the government into DAO, then it becomes just another piece of tech.
Yeah.
It doesn't become this utopian thing that a lot of people are putting it forward.
This democratic, decentralized, autonomous thing, which
Listen,
I think it's going to be more theory. What you're saying is, right?
So, yeah, exactly. It's more of a theoretical idea. I think that there is some, again, it's always a pendulum, right? Everything is always a push and pull. There is things get really, really control driven, then they get really, really open, and then they again kind of go towards the control driven thing. There's a pendulum over here. Right now, Web 3.0 is bringing us towards more of a decentralized, more open kind of networky kind of space, right? And that makes sense to a great deal.
Personally, I feel maybe I agree with you on a lot of points of physical sports, but I was reading about esports, right?
That's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and esports where people are actually approaching it in a way where, running an esports team in the form of a DAO, where it's you're no longer geographically linked.
That's the reason why
Yeah.
esports becomes a different ballgame,
Yeah,
right?
because you're no longer geographically linked, and
Hey,
it
listen,
probably helps out.
Trying to run an international corporation is impossible. It's
Yeah.
close to impossible. The number of arcane regulations you have to deal with is crazy.
So probably this is actually a solution for
is.
being able to do something like this, right?
It is, as long as the government does not care.
Government does not care about what someone else making money illegally
No,
or
it's not even illegal, right? As long as the government does not care that
pay
you
taxes.
pay your taxes.
Primarily that, right?
As long as you pay your taxes, it's unlikely that the government's going to care. You might need to create. I'm sure there will be companies that get that develop over the years, which basically map your DAO style tech implementations to how a private limited company has to work in India.
I'm sure.
And they will figure out a way that you can operate as a DAO, but at the same time be under the private limited
We're
regulation.
talking about like eventually there'll be smart contracts, right? That's another application.
That's a
of,
great
Web3.
application. That is a great application of Web3.
How do you see that working?
I see
Probably
that-
in NBA.
I see that working really well. You
Okay.
hit your incentive, boom, transfer done.
Okay.
Right.
So
Basically,
what does that mean?
A lot of NBA contracts are incentive driven.
Okay.
Okay. So again, this is not my area of full expertise, so I might be technically not
Let's
100%
give a basic
right.
example, right? Yeah.
Okay, but let's say you are so as I understand it, a smart contract, the way it would work is it looks at publicly accessible
Data.
sets of data, and it looks for certain interactions to occur or certain actions to occur. So let's say one of the publicly accessible sources of data is what is the number of points scored by a player in a season.
Points and rebounds, maybe.
Sure. And let's say that Joel Embiid, for again lack of another name, is guaranteed a $3 million bonus if his average is 25 points and 12 rebounds.
Okay.
Let's say on game 73, it becomes clear that that's his average, right? Smart contract fulfilled. Automatically transferred.
So he or his agent don't have to go and say
it's
that.
Not, again, this stuff does happen right now.
Okay.
But it's a better technical implementation of what you're talking about here.
Without the middleman, you're saying.
Without the middleman, without anybody needing to be involved in it, right?
Because in non-salary capped sport, agents are a big menace. And maybe, I don't know.
I don't know about menace. Menace is not necessarily the right word, because when you say the thing about agents is that a good agent is invaluable.
Okay.
A bad agent can do all kinds of shit.
Yeah.
But a good, because see, here's the thing, right? I mean, like we do this over here. We work with podcasts. So we work with a lot of different talent. Talent has managers. They have agents. They have all kinds of people, right? In many cases, it's a good thing that they do have these people looking out for them, because some of these people don't, listen, they're experts in certain other areas, right? So if you're an NBA player, you spend 10 hours a day practicing. Where the are you going to learn about how am I supposed to run you don't even learn things like how I'm supposed to run a bank account, or how am I supposed to ensure that my credits have been transferred correctly. None of this stuff you have.
Yeah. Probably a non-salary cap, like negotiate a better salary, deals, etc. But smart contracts make a lot of sense, right? For a lot of things just to happen, just eliminate a lot of middlemen, I think.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
Rather, and by menace, why I said menace is because if you look at European football, right? It's like power, like when you say cartel, it's the cartel over here, apart from the football teams, it's the talent, right? And almost sometimes the football teams get frustrated because everything is through these super agents, they're known as.
Right.
And everything otherwise just gets restricted.
It's so again, part of the problem with representative negotiation, right? So let me put it this way to you, right? I mean, like the part of the problem is, so agents are as good as they can or cannot be. There are some amazing agents for people. There are some people who are just like absolutely destroying people's careers, right? Not knowing how to negotiate or overplaying their hand, or any of these problems occur.
Anyone in mind where you're referring to, like disastrous managers?
These kinds of things happen, right? I mean, like, Tim Duncan's manager took him for like $70 million. I think Kevin Garnett's manager took him for a ridiculous number of money. It might have been the same person. I think it was the same person. There was this lady who got into Kevin Garnett's life, and she basically was managing his money, and like, it was a ridiculous amount of money. There have been and these guys are smart, because these are post 1980 type players, right? So I mean, like, they had the examples of Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Michael Jordan in front of them. So they were not naive like the earlier players with. Before like 1980, most of the players, I mean, like they were taking advantage like you would not believe.
Okay.
Worth watching the Magic Johnson, the new show on Hotstar. What's it called? Winning Time.
Okay.
It's the story of the LA Lakers from the 1979 onwards.
We'll definitely check it out.
Yeah.
But since we're talking about talent, right? Now I wanted to talk about a different aspect of probably blockchain, right? Which a lot of people are trying to do as an individual. Okay. If I feel I have talent, especially in a country like ours, right? Like so many, like crores, 120, 30 crores, everyone wants to play cricket. And I believe that I have talent, but maybe I don't have the connections, right? To go to a management, to prove myself, because everyone's playing, right? And maybe I put up on, say, a blockchain saying that this is on a probably a public blockchain, where I say that I commit that invest in me, like where people say they crowdfund. Do you think there is a possibility where people can crowdfund their careers, where they say, I have talent, but I am not being able to train adequately because of lack of finances, and invest in me and get 10% of my life earnings or something like that?
I think there is. I think there is a possibility of some stuff around this. I also think that the stuff like this is fraught with problems.
Okay.
You're buying people. at the end of it, right?
You're investing
buying
in people. You're investing in people,
No,
right?
I mean, like, okay, fine. You're investing in somebody. Let's say you're investing in a basketball player.
Okay.
You want, or forget let's not take basketball player. Let's take something which is a little less likely to this, right? Let's say you're investing in a tennis player.
Okay.
Okay. Training or golf player, right? Training for golf or tennis is insanely expensive. Okay, it's not cheap at all, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like, if you want to get coached by like one of the 50 best coaches in the country, in the world, this shit's gonna cost you like $500,000 a year. It's not cheap.
Equipment, access, courses.
Let's say you've invested in a tennis player or a golf player or a golfer, right? And you've invested, say, 25% of your net worth because you believe this guy's going to be there. Right. Let's say this guy pulls a Tiger Woods or a Ben Simmons or something like that, right? Where he just disappears. It's like, screw it, I don't want to play anymore. Now what are you going to do?
Okay.
What are you going to do? Seriously, like if you're an investor, if you invested in this guy, what are you going to do now?
See, on a decentralized network, I'll be screwed, right?
Oh.
Ideally.
Yeah.
But if I'm going through management again, then I will hound them. Where is my money?
So, but basically,
yeah.
you're like, hey, dude, you owe me labor.
Okay.
That's what your answer is, right? You owe me labor. And that's kind of buying people. I mean, like parts of people, but buying people. I don't.
Again, you're saying it's more theory.
It is, but it's also it's just dicey, man. Also, I mean, like, I think there will Spencer Dinwiddie tried this.
No, but you know, when we were talking earlier, you mentioned something about the variance in talent, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's something I think will be a really good point to bring up, right? Like the difference between
there
me.
is a huge amount of talent between the
difference between me, this is a joke I was saying. I don't know, like some cricket fans will remember, Sadagopan Ramesh and Shiv Sundar Das, they were two openers for India in the late 90s. And people used to say that they were only flat wicket specialists, right? As soon as India would travel, they would get their customary zeros and tens. But the joke was basically the talent difference between, say, me and Sadagopan Ramesh is going to be far bigger than probably Sadagopan Ramesh and Sachin Ramesh Tendulkar, right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, like, there are examples of this. There's a player called Brian Scalabrine. He is an he was never a very good player. He was like, he's a solid NBA player. He got like a 6, 7, 8, 10-year career. He is a announcer for the Boston Celtics right now, or I think he's a studio guy, but he works with the Boston Celtics right now. He basically does this thing where people can go and challenge him.
Anyone can challenge him.
Well, I mean, like, he doesn't, like, it's not anybody, but generally college players, high school phenoms, etc., etc. He's 45 years old. He kicks their ass.
Wow.
Like, without question, because the point is that, and he says this, the difference between any rando and myself is much greater than the difference between him and LeBron, right?
Yeah.
And because LeBron is just so fucking great that everybody thinks that he is this. But honestly, the NBA, if you look at it, like, it's a game of inches in that sense, right? So I think that this gets really tricky, especially when you're starting to look at investing in people as well. Just from the perspective of, like, what such a speculative investment, right? And I think that the people who are
no, but what if it's crowdfunded, little money? People say the you money which you're anyway putting in Bitcoin, which you're going to lose. Why not?
Listen, I don't tell people how to gamble with their money. Gamble however the hell you want to. But if you think that this, but understand what you're doing. Understand that you're gambling.
And these guys will anyway have to go to the cartels themselves, right?
Yes. No, and those are the people who have they're the ones who maintain the power at the end.
Yeah. So anyway, still have to be successful. Amit, so anyway, people are talking about metaverse, right? And people say metaverse. When someone says metaverse and sports, right? And we touched upon this question earlier.
Yes.
The evolution of consumption, right? So in Web3 and metaverse, what does it mean to you? What does metaverse mean to you?
In sports?
Yeah, in sports.
I would love to be able to sit at home and watch a game.
How? Like with a VR headset?
Put a VR headset on me, make me feel like I'm inside this, like I'm at the stadium or at the arena.
How do you watch your games now? Like, do you talk with people? Is it collaborative? WhatsApp groups?
I have a WhatsApp group with a bunch of friends who are from Philadelphia. My brother's in it. A bunch of friends are on it. And yeah, I talk with them about it. But I mean, like, it's a mostly solitary experience.
Okay.
But I would really, really enjoy the ability to kind of go and, like, sit down in my room, put on some glasses and act like I'm at the stadium, right? Basically look from left to right for to see what the action is, move around the stadium, all of that kind of stuff. I'd love to be able to do that.
That's really interesting. I was talking about volumetric VR, where you can actually enable people to move within the stadium, and maybe the game you were talking about, right, where the Allen, unfortunately the game with the Sixers lost.
Yes.
But imagine being able to be at the stadium with
they won
with
that
AI.
game. They lost the series.
Oh, they
won
lost
the game.
the series.
Yeah.
But a little bit I wanted to add, because why I remember that, like AI was my favorite, and like whenever someone says who's your favorite basketball player when you were growing up, just to be different, I would say my answer is the answer, because AI was the answer. And another reason was, AI was like what, 6', 5'10",
5'10", 5'11", something
and
like that.
he gave a lot of us Indians hope, right? Like we were like all the others are like 7 feet, 8 feet, and then you would like
nobody's 8 feet, dude.
7 feet.
Yeah.
7 feet is average, right? And
no,
then
7
you would
feet is
see,
not average. 7 feet is like the biggest guy. 6'3", 6'5" is average.
Yeah, but Allen Iverson gave us hope, right, when we were in school, college,
true.
saying that like this little magician going around. But like so metaverse is what you think, like sports brings people together, right? Like it's the only destination viewing happening these days, right? Because no one, you tell anyone else at 8 p.m. you listen to this podcast, they'll be like, yeah, what are you talking about? And I'll listen to it when I want. But you think that will change? You think everyone will be happy with their headsets and walking in this virtual world?
I don't think so. I mean, it's a... I don't think that everybody's going to want to do that forever. I mean, like, real people are real people at the end of it, right? But if I am watching 70 games a year, right? There are 82 regular season games. I'm probably watching, not even 70, probably like more like 60 games a year, right? If I lived in Philadelphia, I'd probably go for 5 games, maybe 7. I don't see myself going for more games than that, right? So the remaining 65, 70 games, I'd love to be able to do this with.
That's
you want to go. Obviously, that's a different experience, right? Live is not going to get replicated.
And these days, it's like a festival, right? When you go to see when you go for the events.
Exactly. But that's another point around the reason why this would be so much fun, right?
Yeah.
Because there's more to it than just like watching on a flat screen.
Yeah, I think like virtually being able to catch a t-shirt from a t-shirt cannon, I think that's going to be, if one can crack that, I think that's going to be the future.
That would be fun, watching the display, watching the, checking out the replays with like 600 people, 60,000 people around you, shouting, ref, you suck with everybody else. This shit's fun.
I'm sure it'll evolve. I mean, now tell me, there's something which we do in every episode, right? Since it's called future proofing. And for all our young listeners, if you want a career in sports, right, which are the things which you should run away from because it's going to be obsolete in another 10 years?
Oh, wow.
And what are the fields which you think are going to thrive over the next decade or so?
So I think sports is going to grow in India to a tremendous degree, right? Like a tremendous degree. We're nowhere close to, forget saturation. We haven't even scratched like a surface here, because Indian sport currently is one sport.
Yeah, it's just cricket. Right?
It's one sport, right? And I don't think that's how things are going to go as we go ahead. I think more and more sports will gain popularity. What do you need for a sport to gain popularity? Like, for real, right? I mean, like, if you're looking at, you need 30, 40,000 people to be into a sport in 6 cities.
Or you need, like what you said, Jordan, right? So we had the Sachin and the Kohlis and the Dhonis. I still think football I don't think we've gotten our Sachin right? We've had Baichung Bhatia, we've had Sunil Chhetri, but I still think...
Why are you limiting yourself to football?
I'm saying like any sport, right?
Think kabaddi, think of how much that is growing, right? That's the second most popular sport in India today. Right, so
and we're good at it, right?
Like Asian goals.
It's
a 10-year-old league, if that. I don't even think it's that. Right, in less than I think it's 7 years actually. Now that I think about it, I think it started at the same time.
Why do you think it's gotten popular?
Because it's fun, it's dynamic, good television coverage, good leagues,
allows people to water cooler conversation,
and basically, so like one of the challenges I've always felt with cricket, which the IPL has addressed, which is why cricket has grown as much as it's grown as well, right? Cricket in the till 1983 was not very popular in India. Then between Sachin and Ganguly, it got popular, but it really blew up post IPL.
Yeah.
Why did it blow up post IPL? Is because you have predictable leagues. You have the same teams. You have teams playing certain number of games. You have a playoff. You have the
Engagement,
final.
affinity towards.
Yeah, no, you engagement and affinity, absolutely. But local teams, you have a league where every team is playing 14 games.
Yeah.
At the end of 14 games, they have a table. Who is where?
You can actually look at sports as a profession, which probably we could not do.
You couldn't.
Like 20, 30 years back,
You
right?
couldn't. And again, I mean, like the number of people who are going to make sports as a profession as an athlete are far fewer than the number of people who are going to do other things in sports, right? I mean, like whether it is working for those teams, whether it is working for television, media, etc., whether it is becoming journalists, writing about sports, whether it is, I don't know. I mean, like there's
Smart contract negotiators.
Smart contract negotiators.
I think the joke
agents.
which we shared was the only thing you should run away is from should not be a referee, right? Like wrong time to be a referee in the next 10 years.
That is true. Yeah, no, I think that's definitely something that technology is going to obsolete out.
Yeah.
For sure.
Anything else in this space which people should go after sport?
Well, I mean, like the industry is a good one, right? And I think that the industry is going to grow generally, but it's also the kind of space which allows for movement from space to space.
Yeah.
Or within that space, it allows movement, right? So I think just like, it's tough to get an opportunity. Get your opportunity, then try and build from there, man.
A lot more technology infusion in sport, right?
Yeah. For sure. We can already see that, but so much more, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like so much more is going to happen in terms of tech, whether it is the Web 3.0 type stuff, whether it's the NFT type stuff, or whether it is like more traditional referee replacement technology or better field technology or better audience experience technology. All this stuff is really, really starting to come into its own now.
Thanks, Amit. Fascinating discussion. You mentioned you're an active listener of other podcasts. Tell us a couple more sporting podcasts which our listeners should definitely check out.
As you know, I'm mostly NBA, but since you are such a football guy, I'll give you a couple of football podcasts.
Sure.
Do check out Football Twaddle on the IVM Podcast Network. Check out Football Shitball also on the IVM Podcast Network. Besides that, on the NBA side, on our network, we have a show called The Airball Diaries, great show by Monish and Nishant. Internationally,
What do you listen to?
So I listen to all of our shows, of course. But I also listen to a number of international shows. I listen to The Mismatch of the Ringer Network. I listen to Bill Simmons' podcast. Open Floor from CNN. I listen to The Greatest of All Talk, which is a paid podcast. I listen to so much Real GM. I think it depends on what happened that week, and who's covering what. The only ones that I think I listen to every week are The Mismatch and the Bill Simmons podcast.
Thank you so much, Amit.
Thank you.
And that was another great episode of Future Proofing with me, Ekalavya Bhattacharya, presented by Intel vPro, built for business. If you loved this episode, please like it, share it, subscribe to it, rate it, forward it to your friends, especially your sports geeky friends. And for all of you NFT enthusiasts, we are running a really super cool contest. We are dropping free NFTs and also some really cool future-proofing merchandise. All you have to do is participate and answer a simple question. More details are on our socials. My socials are Ekalavya across Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Ekalavya B on Twitter. And you can find IVM Podcasts on all the social networks at IVM Podcasts. I'll see you on yet another fantastic episode next week.